How has COVID-19 affected landlords and the new rent control law? Under this environment, are tenants obligated to pay rent? What happens when my tenant stops paying? So if your tenants have delayed payment or are unable to pay rent, what can you do? What are your options? What forms are out there for you as a landlord to keep educating and updating your tenants? So here are the latest updates as to how COVID-19 has affected you as a landlord. We sat with real estate attorney Bruce Menke to answer this one question. So, Bruce, how has COVID-19 now affected landlords?
It's increased their needs to act. Everything from limitations on what they can do and requirements as to what they must do. And it is a multi-tiered level of laws, whether it be state, county, or even local. The governor did issue several general orders, the first of which was, you mentioned, March the 4th was the first general order, which basically encouraged local governments to be more engaged. Later in March, it actually authorized local governments to be exempt from Costa-Hawkins, which disallowed local jurisdictions who already had rent controls. They could keep them, but it disallowed expansion of rent control.
Okay.
So the cities were empowered, as well as counties, were empowered to go ahead and enact their own forms of rent control if they chose to do so. And a number of cities did, and not only did a number of cities take those steps by limiting the ability to raise rents, it also limited the ability of landlords to do evictions. A lot of the local ordinances don't actually prohibit evictions, but what they do is defer the tenant's legal obligation to pay rent.
Correct.
That being the case, if there's a deferment in the legal obligation and they don't pay rent, they can't be evicted for the non-payment of rent. So in that regard, if the inability to pay is COVID-19 related, and one of the challenges there is, how does a landlord know if it's COVID related? The Long Beach ordinance, which is, by the way, subject to change, always be active. One of the major problems in the cities is a lack of landlord participation, an increased participation on the part of tenants, a perception of the council members.
That's right.
that landlords don't care and tenants do, and they're going to take care of the tenants. So that's a major problem. The issue is, if a tenant does not have a legal obligation to pay and it's COVID related, the governor's more recent executive order says, well, all you have to do is really self-certify. Keep your paperwork, because it can be a defense to an eviction case later on. Now, Long Beach has played the game a little differently. To their credit, they've given a landlord the tool saying, look, you're required, Mr. Tenant, provide notice before your rent is due, provide information and documentation as to why you're COVID affected, either by an increase in expenses or a decrease in income, and you're required to do that before the rent becomes due. And Long Beach is also a good example of one of the cities that has a specific additional requirement for inclusion of additional language in a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit if it's for non-payment of rent, which will basically extend the period of time during which the tenant has the opportunity to provide that information and documentation regarding being COVID impacted.
Okay.
Also, as a general note, when it comes to COVID, there's a prohibition, like I said, of no-fault evictions, initial notice requirements in some cities. One of the most significant issues, and it is the topic that is potentially available for discussion at the Long Beach City Council and other cities as well as county councils, is that it talks about a payback period. It's dealing with, okay, your rent is deferred, which is delaying the legal obligation to act, but what about getting paid back? Originally, the city of Long Beach had, as soon as we say that this period expires, and it's been moved a couple of times, maybe moved again, that you don't have to pay rent, but they said everything becomes due immediately thereafter. Now, what other cities have done, and Long Beach has fallen into and is now considering, is you don't have to pay anything. You've got 12 years to repay. 12 years, it only feels like 12 years. 12 months to repay.
It does feel like 12 years.
12 months to repay, and with no requirement that there be any interim payments. The city of Long Beach is at least considering the requirement that the payments of some amount start at a specified period of time after the expiration of the ordinance. The landlords are supporting the effort for 1/12 of each of the back due rent is required over the 12-month period after the expiration of the ordinance.
Okay.
Which is fair, because the reality is, if the hole gets so big that a tenant can't dig out, all we're doing is pushing the can and the
It's just a
problem down the
Band-Aid.
road.
Yeah.
It's a Band-Aid.
Exactly.
And it's going to be a problem that it's going to blow up and the tenant isn't going to be able to get out of the hole. Most tenants.
Yeah. That's really helpful to know that Long Beach is being proactive with these ordinances and also knowing that, we got to get our landlords out there. We got to really get our landlords to participate and hear their voice.
And the other part of the political involvement, the 2nd District as well as the 8th District are very important districts right now. And I really want to encourage anybody that either lives in those areas, works in those areas, has influence in those areas, is definitely speaking up, because the last few years the City Council in Long Beach has been 5-4, a lot of votes for 5-4. We have an opportunity to pick up a position in the 2nd District, and that looks promising. More challenging in the 8th District, and participation by landlords is critical.
Wow. To summarize, there are no evictions right now. You have to stay in the loop of the proper and most updated forms. Things keep changing every single day. Now, more than ever, is really important for us as apartment owners and landlords to stay updated and informed. I would love to be your resource for everything real estate related, so make sure to subscribe to our channel for more updates, more content, and everything real estate. Hey everyone, it's Gia Silva again. If you're a landlord, apartment owner, for more resource, any updates, click right here.